Okay, what's up everyone? We're back and we're going to be doing storage today. So the only thing I did to speed it up a little bit is I went ahead and made myself a little makeshift storage. And I just did this with two cubes stacked on top of each other, gave them some different materials, and this is what I'm just going to use as my storage. So I just made a little folder in here called storage in my inventory folder and put the static mesh in there. Now I still have to make the item interactable. So I'm going to go into my interact system and I'm going to create a child of my BP base interact. And I'm just going to name that BP storage. And then I'm going to move that into my storage folder and open that up. And then I'm going to add the mesh into my static mesh. And then I'm going to go in here and override my function on the parent, which is the base highlight. And I'm just going to input in there E to open storage because I want that to be an interact for me, and that's what I want it to say. So again, if you're using your own interact system, that's fine. We just need a way to interact with this. So I'm using the interaction system that I made previously, which gives me these interface calls here. So I'm going to be using the interact pressed so that when I press my interact key, this will fire in the storage. There's going to be three things that we're going to want to do inside of here. So before we do, let's add our inventory component that we made to this blueprint and just make sure it's configured right. So this is not going to be main inventory. I'm not going to be using the should collapse function, and I'm going to give it, I'm going to say 35 capacity. We can always change that. That's just what I'm going to start with here. So I'm going to start by getting the player character. I'm going to drag off that and then get component by class. I'm going to pick the inventory component, and then I want to drag off this return and I want to get main HUD. So I'm going to drag in the inventory component from our components list, and we're going to drag off that inventory component, and I want to look for set main HUD. And then the main HUD we're going to pass into this is going to be from our player's main HUD. And I'm going to just grab another inventory component. I want to drag off that get main HUD again, and then I'm going to drag off this and do a is valid with the question mark. And we're going to plug that in. And then coming off is not valid. We're going to plug into this set here. Then I'm going to drag off the player character and I'm going to call the interface that we made before. It's called open inventory and it's the one that says message. So we're going to plug that in. I'm going to check open and I'm going to check storage. And I'm going to drag off this inventory component we made here. And I'm going to call update inventory widget. And we should be done here. So we want to open the inventory when we press our interact key. I want to open the player's inventory along with the storage. And the reason we're doing this is because in our inventory component, in the event graph here, we already have this main inventory set up. So if it's our main inventory, meaning the one that's on our player, that's going to be creating the main HUD, getting the reference to it, adding it to viewport. So I don't want the storages doing that too, because then we're going to have multiple HUDs on our viewport. So my storage is going to bypass that create main HUD and then just initialize. But we need a reference to this main HUD for inside the inventory for things to work. So that's why here we're just going to check, is this main HUD reference in our storage inventory valid? If it's not valid, then we're going to set it from our player's inventory. So the first time we open up our storage, this is not going to be valid. So then we're going to be setting it from the player's main HUD. And then every other time after that, it will be valid. So we're just going to bypass that set and just run that right into open. So I'm going to compile and save that. So this open inventory is going to our player. If we remember from an earlier video, we're calling this right here. So that's going to be showing our player inventory. So we can open that up. Before we go in here, we need to have a window that we can open. So I'm going to jump into the inventory folder and I'm going to go into the widgets. And we can do this by duplicating or just calling our main inventory window again, but I want to make a new one just for ease of use, for ease of customizing this to how you want. So I'm just going to duplicate this inventory window. So I'm going to Control D on that. And I'm just going to call that storage. So that'll be WBP storage window. And again, this is just going to make it easier so we can change how the storage window looks without affecting how the inventory window looks. And you can do that all at runtime in Blueprints, but it's much easier just to make a copy of it. And then we can just make this however we want. So for now, I'm just going to go into the text and I'm going to change that from it's saying inventory to storage. And I'm going to leave it like that. And then once we're done and this is working, I'm going to come back in and I'm going to change this window so it looks different. But for now, we're just going to compile and save that. And then I'm going to go into the main HUD because we have to add this to our main HUD. So if we go under user created, we should see the storage window we just made. So I'm going to drag that out, drop it on the canvas panel, and then we're going to select it and we want to do size to content. We want to make sure is variable is checked and we're going to set it to collapsed. And then we can put this where we want. So again, I'm going to move this and resize it after and I'll show you how to do that. But for now, I'm just going to drop that on the window like that. This is very easy to customize this however you want it to look if you want to change the window size and all that. So we'll do that after. So for now, I'm going to compile and save that. And then we're going to go into the inventory component in the show player inventory function we made. And we're just going to add something really quick in here. So all I'm going to do is copy the select and that set visibility there. And we're just going to paste that in. And then we're going to connect the storage pin up to this index here. Make sure collapse is false. We're going to plug in the set visibility. And then I'm going to drag off this main HUD and we're going to get storage window. And we're going to plug that into our target. So I'm going to compile and save that. And then at the end of this code here, we have our update inventory widget. So now we have to go in here and we have to add a update for our inventory now. So I'm going to double click that to open that. And here's our update inventory code that we're doing. And we already have a branch in here with our main inventory as a condition. So we're going to add something coming off the false here. And we can actually just copy most of this. So this little part up here is for the inventory and the should collapse option. Now, I don't want to run the should collapse on the storage, so I'm not going to take this. So I'm going to take this bottom part here. So I'm going to just copy what's coming off the bottom, what's coming out of this false and coming out here. So I'm going to copy all these nodes here and I'm just going to paste them. And then we're going to need the return node, the loop, and the clear children. So I'm going to copy those and paste that here. And then we can plug our loop into the create widget. And we're going to plug our false coming in off this branch into our clear children. Okay, so we're going to drag out the main HUD. We're going to get storage window. And then we're going to drag off that and get our wrap box. And then we're going to plug that wrap box into our clear children. And we're also going to drag the wrap box down past our create widget so that we can plug it into add child to wrap box. So this is going to be most of the inventory update done. We got one more quick thing to do. And I'm going to grab this array element right here coming off our for each loop. I'm going to just drag that out and do a break. And then I'm going to drag off the BP base item and I'm going to say make struct. And you'll see here we have make item struct. So this is our item struct. So we're going to make it. So we're going to connect the BP base item. We're going to connect quantity. We're going to connect index. And then for our inventory on the make item struct side, we're just going to drag off and we're going to do self. And we should see get reference to self. Now this is going to be key for telling it what inventory it is. So when we come down off of the false here, it's asking, is this main inventory? And that's a Boolean that we made in our inventory. That's why we check main on our player, and then our storages are not main. So our storage will come down this branch. And when it goes to create this widget, it's going to get a reference to self, meaning it's going to reference the inventory component on the storage. And that's going to be put in the inventory here. And then the player is going to do the same thing, but that's going to grab the player's inventory. So then we'll know what inventory the item is by this inventory pin here. So I'm going to take this struct that's coming out of here and we're going to plug it into our create widget. And then it also has to go into this break here. And then I'm going to select the break, the make, and the reference to self. And I'm going to collapse that down just to make this a little easier to see here. So we have this collapse graph that it just gave us. So I'm going to copy that collapse graph. And we're just going to paste it in up here because we're going to use it here too. So again, we're going to replace where our item is coming into the create slot and this break here. So I'm going to delete this reroute node right here, which is feeding all these. And we're going to plug this collapse graph into the create widget, and the break struct. And then this is coming from this array element here. So I'm just going to drag off the array element, plug that in, and then add a reroute to clean that up a bit. So now we should be done with our update. And we can comment this to make it a little easier to read too. If you want to throw a comment on here just to make it easier so you know what's going on. So this is our player update. And we can do the same for our storage update. So we're going to compile that and save it. And now before I go any further, I do want to test this. So we should be able to interact with this item. When we press interact, it should open our storage inventory up and it should update it. So we should get inventory slots that get created in there. So let's try that. We still have to put the storage into the world here. So I'm going to drag that blueprint out, and I'm going to add 2 of them because I want to make sure as we're doing this that they're going to work independently from each other. So I'm going to drag 2 storages out. We're going to go up, we can interact with it, and when we open, we have it opening and updating. And because I set it to 35 slots, it's given me the scroll bar here. So now we're going to work on moving items from our inventory into storage. So we're going to open up the inventory slot widget. So in our inventory slot, we have our right-click function that we set up last time. We didn't really do much with it, but it's here and it's ready for us to use. And I'm actually going to take this that we put here last time, and I'm going to move this inside of the on mouse button up function that we started. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm just going to delete it from here, and it'll just make this be a little cleaner because we're going to have to do a couple more checks in here. So I'm just going to keep them all together. So we're just going to get a little space in here. I'm going to disconnect some of this here. I want to put this right click function. So this is the event that we're going to call. I want to just put that in front of that set focus. It'll make this part a little bit easier. And then we're going to paste in what we just copied here. So we're going to put this branch up here. And then we're going to connect in our true. So if the condition is true, then we're going to come out and we're going to do this right click. If the condition's not true, what I want to do is just bypass this right click. So I'm just going to drag out some reroute nodes and plug into there. Okay, so this branch we just pasted in, I want to do an and Boolean in here. And we're going to add 1 extra pin to that too. So the first condition is going to be what we just took in here. We want to make sure that the quantity is greater than 0 because we don't want to right click on an empty slot. And then I'm going to click on this break struct here, and I'm just going to expose that inventory pin. And then we're going to drag off here and get main inventory, and we want the Boolean. And that Boolean is going to be the next condition. And then the last condition is we're going to drag off this inventory and we're going to get main HUD. Then we're going to drag off this and get storage window. Then I want to drag out and do is visible. And that's going to be our last condition. So in order for us to right click on an item, this is how I want this to be set up here. In order for us to right click on an item, our storage window has to be visible. We have to be clicking from our main inventory, and the item we're clicking on has to have a quantity greater than 0. So we're all set in here now. I'm going to compile, save, and then we're all set to set our code up here. So I'm going to go into the inventory component, and I'm going to add a function, and we're just going to name this storage. And then we're going to add a couple inputs on this. So the first one I want to add is to storage, and we'll leave that as a Boolean. Then I'm going to add a second one, item, and we're going to pass in our item struct into it. Going to compile and save that, and then we can go back to our inventory slot really quick where we're right clicking, because now we can have that function to call in here. So I'm going to grab the item, we're going to drag off and break, and then we just need the inventory pin exposed here. So now I can drag off the inventory and I can look for that function we just made. So I'm going to type storage, and we'll be calling this on our player's inventory. And I'm going to check to storage right here. I'm going to check that to be true. So when we right click, we're going to call this storage event with to storage being true. So I'm going to compile and save that, and then we're going to go into the inventory component, into the storage function we just made. I'm going to drag out from storage, and I'm going to do a branch here. And then coming off true, I want to do a get actors with tag, and the tag I'm going to feed in, I'm just going to call it storage. And then we're going to make another function in our interface. So if we go to our BPI inventory interface we made. I'm going to add a new function in here and just call this move item. And this move item is just going to have a input of item, and that's going to be of the type item struct. So we can compile that, save it, go back to our inventory in our storage function here, and now we can just call that. So that was move item, and we want to make sure we do the one with message. And we're going to plug in the target, and then I'm going to grab the remove item that we did. We're going to drop that in. We're going to drop in the update inventory, and we're going to return out. And then we just want to pass our item to this. So the item that's coming in, I'm going to pass that item to the move, and then we're going to pass it to the remove item too. So we'll be sending this interface to our storage, and that's going to be adding the item into storage, and then we're going to be removing it from our inventory, updating our inventory, and returning out of the function. So we're going to compile, save that, and then we can go into our storage. We need to add our storage to our inventory BPI. So I'm going to go to class settings, add implemented interfaces, and look for the BPI inventory. And then we should get all of our functions here. I'm going to double click the move item to get that in here. And now coming off the move item, I'm going to do a branch here. And I'm going to just right click and I'm going to type in can interact. And we want to get it. Now this is something that's coming from the parent blueprint. So when we made our parent interact, we gave it a can interact function. So when it's getting highlighted, we gave it a can interact Boolean that we're setting. So when we look at it, we can interact. Then when we look away, can interact is false. So you can see we don't have that variable here, but if we go up to show inherited variables, we have can interact there. So that's coming from our parent. So I'm just going to hide the inherited variables. So if you're using your own interact system, we just need a way that you can tell it what you're looking at. Because if we don't have this, then the item is going to go into different inventories that we have if we have more than one. So this is going to stop it, and it's only going to go into the inventory that we can currently interact with. So after that, we're going to grab our inventory, and we're just going to call process item. Plug that into our true, and then we just have to pass our item into it. And then the last thing we have to do is just give this storage a tag. So I'm going to click BP storage up here. Then I'm going to go in the search and just search for tag, and you'll see actor tag. We're going to add an element, and we're going to name that storage. And then compile, save. And I forgot to do one thing really quick. In the inventory slot, I forgot to pass in our item to our storage function. So we want to grab this item and pass that in. I forgot to connect that up. So we're going to make sure the item is connected to our item. So that will get passed into our inventory function. Let's compile, save that, and we'll try it. So there we go. We can move items into storage now. So if I right click, we get them in storage. They are working independently from each other. So this one's getting my food, that one's getting the water. So now let's work on getting our items back. So to get our items back, we're going to go into our inventory slot widget. Under this left click, that's how I'm going to be bringing the items back. So I'm just going to get a little room in here. So we just need to add something in here. And now that we have our owning inventory inside of our item itself, just to clean this up a little better, I'm going to get rid of this get component by interface, the player character, because now we can just use the pin right here. So if I take this break item, I can just expose that inventory pin. And now I don't need all that. I can send an interface right to here. So I'm just going to come off this true, and we're going to add another branch in here. And then coming from this inventory, I'm going to do get main inventory, and that's going to be our condition for this branch. So I'm going to drag off this inventory pin here, this reroute node, and we're going to look for that storage function that we made in our inventory. So if I just type in storage, you'll see call function storage. And then we can plug that into our false. We can plug our item into there. And then we want to make sure to storage is not checked this time. So when we right click, we're going to have it checked. When we left click, it's not going to be checked. And then I'm just going to add a reroute node here. And we're just going to take that reroute up to our U's. So then just make sure both of our targets have something plugged in, both of our items. To storage is not checked. So now when we left click from inventory, that's going to call this function in our inventory. So now if we go back into that function we made, this is the storage function in our inventory. Now we can come off false because to storage will be false now. So I'm going to grab the remove item and we're going to throw that in. And then I'm going to get player character. And then we're going to drag off and get component by class. We're going to pick our inventory component. And now I'm going to drag off this inventory component and do a process item. And then we're going to drag an update inventory in here and return out. And then we need to make sure that we plug in our item to our remove item function here. Plug in our item to our process item. And I'm actually going to just take these reroute pins and just lower these down. And then our process item should be going to our player. So we should be all set with that. So let's compile and save it. And let's see if we can grab our items back out now. So if we right click to throw stuff in, now we should be able to left click and take it back. So there we go. We have working storage now. The one thing I want to do before I close this video out is I just want to show how we can edit the storage window here. So I'm going to change mine a little bit. So I'm just going to go into the storage window widget that we made. I forget if I showed this in an earlier video too, but if we want to edit the size of this window, and this goes the same for our regular inventory window as well, we can come in here to user created, and then we can grab the inventory slot and drop it on the wrap box. Now this is just for a test, so we're going to delete this after, but this gives you an idea of how big the window needs to be. So I'm going to just copy that inventory slot. We're just going to paste a bunch of them in the wrap box here. So if I wanted to change the size of this, I can just go up to the size box here, and then we have our size here. So let's say I wanted to make this like a little wider. You can see that that wrap box is going to automatically add our inventory slots to this. So let's say I wanted to do 7 slots across, and maybe we'll make this a little shorter. So maybe we'll do 3 rows here. So we can make that look a little different by doing something like this. Now just make sure when you're done in here, delete all these slots that you put in. Those are just for test. We can compile and save that. And then if you go into your main HUD, you can see that the changes we made now reflect on the main HUD. So now we can move this window to wherever we want. We can compile and save that. And with 35 slots, I should have 5 rows of 7. So now if I open that up, you can see how it looks different now. And we have 3 rows there plus an extra 2. So that's how easily we can change that. But that should be our storage all set up and working. So I think that's going to be it for now. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.